Welcome to the show where we unearth new ways of looking at ever-evolving life around the world, seen from a number of different industries, cultures, and backgrounds. But there's one thing that unites everyone I speak to. They all want to do their part to make the world better in their own unique ways. It's a uniting passion. Whether they're from the commercial world, third sector, or public sector, from the global north or the global south, my name is Philippa White, and welcome to TIE Unearthed. Hello, and welcome to episode 63 of TIE Unearthed, and our last episode of the year. Now, this episode is coming at an interesting moment. It's a moment where there's just so much going on. There's so much uncertainty facing everyone. Things just feel overwhelming, don't they? From an energy crisis, political turmoil, economic concerns, geopolitical concerns. But like many other people out there, I see hope and opportunity in all of this. And Tessa is also one of those people. The thing is, we could do nothing, but we know these issues, they're not going away. Or we can act. And today, Tessa is going to inspire you to act. Tessa Wernink is a social entrepreneur and business activist. She's a facilitator and podcast maker who is addressing social and environmental issues in business. She is on a mission to make organizations more humane and to embolden people to speak up, take action, and create cultures that nurture collective leadership. Her most recent endeavor is the Undercover Activist, which we're going to be talking about today. It's a learning hub that provides training to professionals and organizations on what it takes to encourage and master a positive activist mindset. She guides participants in campaigning, communication, and innovation skills that helps them drive change from within. She was co-founder of Fairphone, which is a social enterprise and Europe's only smartphone producer. By using business as a force for good, Fairphone uses a market approach to inspire consumers and producers to choose for fair working conditions, circular design, and the big one, long-lasting use. What a concept, right? Role modeling a new kind of economy is the inspiration for the podcast series that she created called What If We Get It Right, which hosts impact entrepreneurs from around the globe who share stories of success and failure of how they are developing ethical and sustainable business practices. So today we're going to be talking about all of this and so much more. So grab your favorite beverage or throw in those running shoes. And here's Tessa, and we will see you after this one in January of 2023. Happy holidays. Tessa, it is so wonderful to have you with us on TIE Unearthed today. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Philippa. Thank you for asking me. It's fun. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So am I. It's very much in line with so much of what we believe. Obviously, as I mentioned to you just now before we started recording, we've got our event on the 15th of November. By the time this goes out, I'm not sure if the event will have happened, but what you're doing is perfect. And I'm so excited to get more people understanding about it. So before we get to that, before we get to all the incredible stuff you've done, all the incredible stuff that you are doing, maybe let's back up a bit. First of all, actually, maybe just say where you are, because I love it. I talk to people from all over the world. Where are you right now?
I'm currently calling in from Amsterdam in the Netherlands, where it's 23 degrees at the end of October. So it's really weird. People are still having food on terraces outside and stuff like that. So it's a beautiful city, but it's not supposed to be this hot for this long.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
And are you from Amsterdam originally?
The question where you're from is always really hard for me to answer. I guess I would say I am Dutch. My parents are both Dutch nationals. But I was actually born in Hong Kong on Victoria Peak in Hong Kong. And I spent the first 10 years of my life in Asia, mostly in Hong Kong, but also traveling around. My father wasn't an expat, but he did find work there. And my mother, who also grew up actually in Indonesia as a child, So we spent a long time there before I moved to the Netherlands. And then when I was after university, I went back to Asia and I met my husband, who is British. So now we live in Amsterdam. So we're kind of all over the place when it comes to identities.
Yeah.
So the where you're from is difficult.
I can relate to that 100%. I can relate to that. And how cool about the Asia experiences. I lived in Bangkok, Thailand for a while. I finished my degree there. And I have to say, I was born in South Africa, English parents, grew up in Canada, but having never been to Asia until that experience of my degree, it was the first time ever, because I traveled around Europe, I've traveled around Africa, but Asia put life totally on its head. I mean, it was just extraordinary. I think I realized that don't assume anything because it's just probably going to be different.
And there's so many different places in Asia as well, because after university, I went to Japan to teach at a Japanese school there. And I remember thinking, oh, but I grew up in Hong Kong, I'll be fine. But then I arrived in Japan and I just realized it's such a different culture. And it took like a year of culture shock to go, okay, wait, this is completely different. It reminds me a little bit of the West because it's modernized, but it's a completely different culture in that sense. And then going to Shanghai after that was like, oh yeah. So there's, Asia's just this concept for us of like being different, but in Asia itself, there's just so many different cultures.
Subtleties. Amazing. What an experience. God, I could just talk to you about this, but anyway, we need to move on. But I could easily just understand more about all of this.
Yeah, it's so defining, isn't it? I definitely think that that's been such a big part of like shaping who I am and how I see the world. That you've got this outsider perspective and that there's no one truth and you can always see things from a different angle. So yeah, I guess it's a good place to start.
It is. So maybe you could tell us just a little bit about, I mean, obviously where you are from, that's just given us a really great insight into obviously your upbringing, I suppose, but maybe just what is your background and how did you get to what you're doing professionally now?
Yeah, so I think, the moving around and exploring is part of my nature, I think, after I finished university. And so I think I would say that job hopping has also been part of who I am, like exploring through, what gives me energy for the first, like between my 20s until my 30s. I studied English literature and communications. And then later on, I did a minor in international development. So I remember thinking business is just not where I want to be. My father was a self-made businessman. I just thought business is like, there's nothing inherently good about it. It's just about earning money. I didn't really have anything with business itself. And then I moved to Japan after my university degree and I taught English at a Japanese school. And while I think I loved kind of having conversations about all kinds of things and the conversations itself being why we were talking to each other in the first place, I also felt a little bit confined in the school and I didn't know where it was going. And then I moved to Shanghai and started working in a big Japanese hotel. And it was the pace, I think, of business people coming to and fro, and also kind of the different cultures and people coming to Shanghai at the time, because there was so much business development around, that maybe I think inspired me again, that I think I do like that fast pace and I do like things happening all the time. And how about if we did have conversations that weren't, where you could have conversations with people where there wasn't always an agenda, build something together. And I think I started on my entrepreneurial life there, trying to set up a business with people who'd come there. Then when I left Shanghai, I think after a couple of years, I thought maybe this isn't where I want to be and grow and build a family. I moved to the Netherlands and I struggled for a couple of years to find my place. And then I met Bas van Abel, who was starting up a social enterprise, Fairphone. And I think that's where I really found kind of everything that I had experienced come together in a kind of, on the one side, there was a lot of like campaigning and storytelling and education, I guess, around what does it mean to build a phone, as well as, okay, let's do it, let's do some experimentation and see how we can build this thing by coming together and just, taking it one step at a time and seeing whether we could do it differently.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue to actually understanding then about Fairphone, because that was a big part of obviously the start of this journey for you, as you mentioned. For our listeners who don't know about Fairphone, because I'm aware that anyone who's in the Netherlands probably does, but people in Canada and the UK, and they might not, and the US and Brazil. So perhaps you can tell us a little bit about Fairphone and
Yeah.
the phenomena that is Fairphone?
The starting point of Fairphone is something that is very much related to international law, but it was started as a campaign actually by Action Aid, which is a big NGO in the Netherlands, and they said, listen, there's this whole tragic situation around what they call conflict minerals, which are dug up in the Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo. And they're in all of our electronics. And how are we going to make people more aware about where our electronics come from? And how it started, Fairphone, was really around this issue. And it became something bigger around this idea of, yeah, great. It's great that we can build awareness around these issues, but then what? Then we've got all our electronics and people know they're bad, but they don't really have an alternative. So it started really as a campaign to say, okay, where does it come from? And what does it mean? And it turned into something bigger where it said, okay, but if we're going to really try and change something, what would that mean? How about if we did build a phone that was made fairly? What would the difference be in how we approached it? So it started with looking at where the materials came from, but also looking at how it was made, so the conditions in the factories where it was built, looking at the design of phones. Why were they designed for obsolescence, so that you replace them every 2 years to, in the end, where does it come from? And that approach, I think, has been really transformational when it comes to how we set up businesses, because it's a very holistic approach, saying we can't actually just look at the symptoms or just part of the problem, but we really need to take that kind of systems thinking approach. Okay, it's all related. Nobody knows how this phone really came together except the phone. So if we start kind of opening up the phone, unraveling it, making interventions, then step by step we can start thinking about how we do want it to be designed. If we looked at the values and the things that we think are fair.
Wow. Just out of interest, how many people started this? I mean, it was you, and you mentioned a name that I didn't quite catch.
Actually, it's a project that started it's an organization called VAG, very Dutch name, in the Netherlands. 2 years as a campaign, and I joined the founding team when we started to make it into a social enterprise. And there were 4 of us at the time. Okay. Bas van Abel.
That's what you said. Yeah. Okay.
And some others. I love telling the story of why we started it, but it's also good to know that it's the only mobile smartphone in Europe that is made in Europe. And it still exists today. It's 10 years old, and they've made 4 different versions. It's a modular phone, so hundreds of thousands of people have bought it by now, and you can replace the parts and make it last longer. So it's really become this kind of...
this is amazing. So, I mean, because if someone is in the UK, can they buy one?
Yes, they can. Yes. I'm not sure that they ship to the US yet, but anywhere in Europe you can buy a Fairphone. It started with this idea of We Are Fairphone, and it was a crowdfunded model. So it was very much around people who also use that phone to tell different stories about what they want to raise when it comes to electronics. So just like, I guess, the things that you wear and you eat, it's part of that bigger movement of understanding where your things are from, and as a consumer being able to make a choice in a way that represents your values.
So this is a journey, right? It's a journey. So started with Fairphone and obviously learned lots, but you decided to continue your journey. So where are you now?
What I learned at Fairphone is how we can make businesses more humane environments, but also a force for good. While I am incredibly positive about social businesses coming up in the world and being real role models, I think, to traditional businesses on how business can be done. I think from a systems perspective, it's really important that big corporations and other organizations start to move more faster in different directions to tackle social and environmental issues. So a couple of years ago, I joined forces with my business partner, Veronik, and we set up the Undercover Activist. And the idea is really how we can help young professionals master more of an activist mindset in their work. And that means training young professionals to be a bit more activist in the ways that they can be voices of difference, and also accelerate their projects around social and environmental issues, as well as just making businesses more aware that they need to nurture more of an activist culture. So how can we make it easier for voices of dissent or people to speak up in organizations? Because in the end, it's not about being against something, but it's about making the final decisions better, or being able to bring these values. Because I think businesses have become such a place where we kind of come in, hang up our coat of who we really are, at the door, and then we turn into these people that we maybe do not recognize, and we don't actually stand up for the things we believe in. And I think that that's something we really need today.
And it's something that people are looking for, right? I mean, people are looking for that. And it's interesting that you talked about the corporate side. And I'm keen to understand how you do this, because, there's a lot of companies that are keen for people to contribute, to be innovative, to challenge. But the reality of that is it's hard, right? Because those are like annoying people that are getting in the way of the system. But at the same time, we know we need to change the system, because if we don't evolve, we won't survive in so many respects, both from just a planetary kind of environmental point of view, but also businesses need to evolve to survive. That's just how the nature of business works, right? One thing is working with the change makers themselves to inspire these individuals and spark them. But the other side, obviously, like you pointed out, are the companies. So I'm just curious, how do you do that, and what does that look like?
We really intentionally, I think, have positioned it as activism and not only entrepreneurship. So I think when it comes to like nurturing this idea with young professionals, it's about not only being voices of difference and using your influence, but how can you disrupt? And I think that disruption, some people are more comfortable with it than others. You could be more moderate or more radical, but what we need is really to upset the status quo sometimes. So it's also sitting with that discomfort and maybe understanding what conflict is and what your response is to conflict. If we start thinking about conflict not on a personal level, or people making it personal, that you raise conflict, then we can start actually looking at what the conflict stands for and how we can take it into decisions. So I think from the personal level, and we really are there more on the work floor, let's say, for people who want more help with this personal leadership and agency. And we've built a whole online course around it. So it's 6 modules in which we go from what does activism in business mean? So how do you create a safe space in business? What are your rights? Because it's very different in one business to the next, in one country to the next. So really understand where you sit and maybe who you are, because depending on who you are, what you look like, raising your voice has different consequences. So to understand that from each other as well. It's also this journey of like, okay, why am I so angry? What do I stand for? What is the thing that is underneath all that anger and that anxiety? What do I want to actually start embracing that activism from a positive perspective? And then it goes to like, how do I connect with others, go past being lonely, and being always that person who raises that issue in a conversation. So kind of not looking maybe on a functional way to connect with people at work, but on a values level. And then I think the last thing is really from the systems perspective, like, I think the intention in businesses is to do good. So rather than only thinking about how to change things bottom up, think about what are the goals that a business has and how can you connect to that so that you can build momentum and accelerate your project. So that I think is the way we do it. And we run online courses, we do in-house workshops. We did one yesterday for the government, 50 people who have already organized internally. So it's great. They're already kind of come together around sustainability, and they really want to know how to act. Because I think that's the last part that I forgot to say. There's no activism without action. So really thinking about all these things, how's it going to move from talk to actually doing something? And that can be a small step or a big step. I have to say it's loads of fun, and it's really hopeful and inspiring to speak to all these people who want to do something.
And out of interest, what would be the age range of the people that you're working with?
It's funny because somebody said, well, what do you mean young professionals? And he must have been in his 50s. And I said, oh, I meant young at heart. I'm so sorry. And it's true, we attract people from all ages. I think it was just maybe, in that kind of first development of creating a company or a new project, is that product market fit that everybody goes through. I think we've got this thing and we think it's for young professionals, but actually it's for everybody who feels like they've maybe oppressed that kind of that side of themselves and want to connect with a group of people to think about how they could, because that's the idea. The undercover activist can become cynical, it's like, oh, nothing is changing, and they kind of check out of work, or it's what they call quiet quitting maybe, or leave and go and find something else. Whereas I think if we actually try to kind of embrace it and say, how can we do something with it, And it's a really valuable asset for a company to have these motivated people. So how can we create this culture around it?
Yeah, definitely.
Nurturing it. Yeah.
Can you give us a story of a recent perhaps project or a recent person that has been through it, just to bring the experience to life for our listeners?
Yeah. We thought we were going to attract lots of business people, and we have, but we've also attracted people from government agencies as well as healthcare. And one of the people that really inspired me was a man in his mid-30s who was a gynecologist. And he said, for some reason, because I'm Black, everybody thinks I'm all about diversity and inclusion, but actually I want to talk about menopause. I want to talk about women's rights and why in healthcare there's no gender equality on how medicine is made, or that when women come into my office, they get advised so many different things than men when it comes to their sexuality or whatever. So I want to make this topic, raise this topic, but actually when you study medicine, you're actively dissuaded to be an advocate on anything. You are there to prevent somebody from getting sick or to help them. So he was saying, I'm actually doing a PhD. I want to do more of a PhD on activism in healthcare. And he started doing this course and saying there were so many different things that he wanted to speak up on. But he found the one thing, like the foundational thing that drives him, and started speaking up more about
that's really cool. Yeah. I love that.
He's a member of a political party here in the Netherlands, which is like the Christian Union. And he said they find it very difficult to speak to me. They think maybe you should be part of a different political party, where your ideas are more kind of common. And he said, no, but then I wouldn't have an impact. It's about creating this understanding, I think, of having a different voice. So it's really impressive. That person stuck with me, but there are lots more stories.
Yeah, of course there are. I mean, it's very similar to the work that we do in the sense that I think it's a mix, isn't it, of helping people unearth their purpose, right? So it's helping people unearth what is it that makes you tick? What is it that you feel like you stand for? And then giving them the insights to kind of piece those puzzle pieces together. And then it's the confidence to then be like, oh, so I can be the driver of change. I can. Yeah. Right. Okay. I don't have to wait for someone else. No, you can. That's the whole point of this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Every job is a climate job, that kind of feeling as well. That people always think of it, or they're very self-critical. That they aren't. I do eat meat, or I do this. Am I an activist? People don't really identify with this idea of activism, and yet when you ask them to go to their earliest memory of something that upset them or made them angry, and how they've acted to change something, then everybody feels really connected with this idea of what's fair, what do I stand for, when do I speak up. But I think it's just become something that it hasn't been nurtured in our educational system or in our working environments.
The Pink Floyd song, The Wall,
Yes.
We don't need no education. And that's what that whole video is about. If you watch the video, I mean, the whole song is about that. And we are kind of made to fit into the system and be kind of cogs in the machine. But actually, that's not what's going to drive things forward. And that's not what's going to that's not how things are going to change. And we need to slowly change this culture. That's the thing as well. Like culture, we talk, you like me, we've traveled around the world a lot. We love culture, but actually, I don't know if I love culture. I love different foods. I love different ways of doing things. I love different traditions. But actually customs and ingrained culture is actually very oppressive. And that's what doesn't allow things to change, does it? But to change culture, it's not easy.
It's funny because when I taught in Japan at that school, I remember these moments where the Japanese teacher would say to the students, can you explain this custom to Tessa sensei? It'd be like me, the teacher. And they'd be like, what do you mean explain this custom? They'd never even seen it as a custom. And then it's like, oh, why do we eat a roll of sushi facing the east on this day?
Doesn't everyone do that?
That's what you do, right? Yeah. And I just remember this kind of process in their heads of going, oh, so not everybody does it. And why do we do it? And I think the customs that get dangerous when you think that it's normalized or something. And I guess we all fall into that trap of thinking that what we do is the normal way of doing something. It's what they say about when women come into an all-male, environment to business. It's like it's not that the woman is, it's just that they didn't realize what they were doing until someone said, huh? You know, what is it? Fish in water. Until they come out of water, they realize that they were in water.
Fish out, yeah.
So I think that's that custom. But so it's I think I love the cultural traveling because it can give you so many different perspectives. Isn't that the quote? The kind of the T.S. Eliot, the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the very first time.
Oh, God.
I think it's always... A lot of people leave because they think they're going to discover all these different cultures, but actually you realize where you come from or what.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the power actually of disrupting comfort zones, isn't it? Because you disrupt your comfort zone, then you do start to kind of realize more about actually yourself. And absolutely is when you do start to develop that cultural intelligence as well. When you start to understand different worlds, different people, you have a much better understanding of also who you are and where you fit in, and the power of diversity, right? The power of different people. Can you share insights of what it takes to positively disrupt and lead by example?
I would say, first off, it's a mindset thing. It's a growth mindset in a sense that if you're going to disrupt, or you need to kind of think where you're going to go after this, because you're going to like shake it up. You're going to maybe fail and start again, but you're going to definitely learn, you know? And I think that kind of mindset of whatever it is now is the future can't be worse than what is now. Let's see where it goes. It takes that courage, or maybe sense of what you were saying before is, oh, I can do something different. You know, I do have that agency to at least try, and maybe not taking too big a step, just taking things step by step and having the patience to see where they go. Humor, vulnerability.
Vulnerability.
Sense of failure, and being open, I guess, to learning. Yeah, and courage. I mean, I think that there's a lot of public opinion that's being formed around the climate activists that are kind of upsetting the social norms at the moment because they're sticking themselves to really expensive paintings in these different places. And it is disruptive. And from this kind of XR idea of like agitate, innovate, or orchestrate, I think is there three kind of stages of disruption. This is agitating, it's civil disobedience, and it's it takes courage. But I think the next step on like what is the positive, what is the conversation that we're going to have afterwards. I don't think that disrupting is enough, and that's I think what upsets me at the moment about public opinion is that it's almost like we don't want to have that conversation. And so we're talking about all the other things, we're talking about how do we defend ourselves from these activists? How do we make museums more safe? How do we say it in a different way? But it's like, okay, but we want
it's not going away.
No.
You can, it's this event that I'm having. What I'm saying when I started off is basically that, there's just so much going on. It's very overwhelming for all of us, right? Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people feel a little bit paralyzed. And so there's kind of two things that you can do. One is literally nothing and become kind of like an ostrich and just stick your head in the sand and just hope that all of this is just going to go away. Yeah. It's not going away.
No, and I remember my brother saying this. There was this big poster in this place he used to work. It said, "That's you." And it said, like, spike it. It said, "Approve or improve." And it said, "When we criticize, let's try and fix the faults we find." So I think that's something that has always kind of been for me is like, how do you, if it's not about being against something or that something isn't right, but just this feeling of like, how can we think together about what's good about something and how could it be better? And
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And that's the thing. It's like, so then the other option is acting. So then what do we need to do? I see it as three things, which is very in line with what you're doing as well. One is collaboration, because it's impossible for one person, one country, one sector, one company to solve these issues. So we have to step out of our worlds and learn how to collaborate, which also isn't very easy because it means that we have to be vulnerable and we have to talk to people that we're not used to talking to. And that's not easy. We need to broaden our horizons, because then that's the only way, again, stepping out of our silos and seeing the world kind of from a different viewpoint and from different perspectives. Einstein has that quote, which I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's like, how do we solve the problems with the same thinking that we had when we created them, yes. Right? And then the third is it's
creating agency for everyone, realizing that people need to just feel empowered and know that they can be the change. I think those three things is kind of what makes all of this.
There was a strategy we had, and Bus from Alba from Fairphone coined it. He said we were strategically naive, and it was a really interesting approach. And I noticed that I still find it helps me when you say collaborate and going out there and being vulnerable. Is that we get into this stage where we're the experts, and we feel like we need to find the solution or have the solution. Whereas I've noticed that if you ask people how they did something, that a lot of innovation's already there, but we feel like we're holding on to this kind of person that we're supposed to be, and everybody looks at as having the answer. I guess that leadership, it goes to this idea of that leadership isn't necessarily that you know all the answers.
Totally. And you actually are a lot stronger to ask for help. Exactly. We see this on all of our projects, and it's fascinating because we have an intro stage to our program. It's a 6-week program, and people are connected to big social challenges linked to some kind of organization. We work in 24 countries around the world, and the programs are based mostly in the global south. And so individuals who are in banking in New York or banking in London, they have to step out of that. And it's virtual. But they're working as a team, as a cohort to figure out how to solve this problem in a very short amount of time. So constraints are at the core. You're having to talk to people who are different to yourself, and you have to be vulnerable because you have literally no idea what the solutions are. And so in the training, we have a preparation process. It's about 2 weeks, and there's coaching and there's training, and, we have an anthropologist involved. I mean, it's wonderful. It's beautiful. And we've literally done everything. It's so cool. And they get it. And, the teams, they're highly intelligent people and so keen to get involved. The energy on these programs is fantastic. But it's so funny how every single time they fall into the same traps. And we get into about the third week, we have coaching throughout, and we get into the third week, and it's the same time every time. So it's sort of the third, fourth week, and they're all a bit kind of, we still haven't had that aha moment. Oh my God, we don't really, time is running out. We only have 2 more weeks. And always the same conversation. I'm like, okay, cool. Have you talked to the locals? We talked about that a few times in the coaching and stuff. But anyway, have you talked to the locals? Have you spoken to the people? Yeah, no, actually, we haven't done that yet. Yeah, we need to do that. Yeah, we need to do that. I'm like, okay, cool. Why don't you do that? And let's catch up next week. And I'm pretty sure. And they don't even want to talk to me the week after. They're like, oh my God, it's almost like a bicycle with training wheels on. And suddenly the training wheels have been yanked off. And they're like, here we go. We're going now. And it's so funny because it's almost, there's so much involved in that. It's almost, they want to stay in a safe place. They want to have the conversations with the people they've already been introduced to from the organization. That's a safe place. It's still pushing them because it could be somebody from a Kenyan organization or a Malawian organization, but it's being vulnerable and saying, we still don't really know the answers. I would really like to speak to such and such. And actually, we still haven't quite figured this out. And it's almost like they need the permission. It's fascinating. Sometimes you're being really, really strong to ask for help. For people below you, you're running a team to show vulnerability and say that you don't know. And actually, you're looking for people who are on your team to help you come up with solutions. One, empowering people is the best thing you can do. It's fantastic for them. And they probably have a lot of the answers.
Yeah. But our whole education system is about you knowing all your answers and being tested on who has the answer. No, it's not really collaboration in that sense, is it?
Yeah.
Tested on collaboration. No, fascinating.
Yeah. So I love the idea of your podcast. Let's talk about that. It's called What If We Get It Right? And it's very much in line actually with what we've just been talking about. Your aim is to offer the business world new narratives, showcasing how to build for-profit businesses that serve planetary and societal needs. You're keen to start a conversation about how people can lead our world in a new direction and where we might be getting it right. I just wonder, can you bring that to life? And maybe you can, I don't know, what are some stories and lessons that you can share from your podcast?
It was in a time where I thought, okay, I left Fairphone, been through quite a difficult period of my life, and thought I need to start making something again. And for me, stories are medicine. And they really inspire me. And it was a really good excuse to have in-depth conversations with lots of people I admire. And I got together with Impossible, actually, which is a planet-centric design agency, and they help Fairphone all the way at the beginning as well around how can we use our, on the software side of the phone. And they've been developing this idea around planet-centric design. So we thought, okay, so let's start this first season around the Sustainable Development Goals. So we took the 17 goals and I looked for a business for each of these goals, how they embrace this goal, not only that's what we're working toward, but what would that mean for our company if indeed we're looking at gender equality or life on hunger. And so the first season is 17 interviews with social entrepreneurs from around the globe. They are all fascinating in their own ways, but the ones that come up for me are the solar electric vehicle, the Scion, which is Sono Motors. This is a guy who started in his garage, like one of those kind of stories, but you'd think it was never the Silicon Valley kind of model at all. It was a person who said, okay, we're not building this car, like someone said, to save the planet, but it is to save cars, So if we're going to be using cars, then they need to be powered in a different way, but they also need to give back. So, the solar panels on them, if they're charged, they can start giving back into the grids and then be something more than just standing on the street. But also they created a model around how can we share this vehicle, make sure that it's not just one person, one vehicle. So they thought about this kind of from this holistic point of view as well. I think another one is a fascinating woman who steps out of business and she became a death undertaker. Is that what you call it?
Wow, yeah. An undertaker. Yeah,
undertaker. Yeah. She said death is, and it was funny because I interviewed her on the first day of lockdown in the Netherlands. So it was at that time, it was like, we don't know what we're going to expect. And death has become so much more part of our society, but it's really difficult to talk about. She says, on the one hand, the way we bury people and how we deal with it is so far removed from who we are and what we hire people to do that for us. So how is it possible that we can't do it ourselves? But also we bury them far too low underground where there is nothing that eats or disposes of bodies. The amount of waste that comes into the kind of materials we use. How can we start approaching this business from a more ethical point of view?
Wow, I love that.
Yeah. And maybe a third, I guess, is actually a Hong Kong entrepreneur who is creating fish grown in a lab, because she said in China, there's no way you're going to get people to stop eating fish. So how can we create something that is like an alternative to fishing? I'm vegan. I live in Hong Kong. That's really uncommon, but I'm going to start creating an alternative to fishing the oceans. And the funny thing is it's amazing. She's managed to do so many trials, and it's not even legal yet to sell her product, and yet she's taking all that risk and investing in something that she feels.
Wow, gosh!
Yeah. So it's a fascinating. It was a fascinating journey. The second season was actually last year. It was even more niche, but it was about social entrepreneurs in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Oh yes, I saw that. Yeah.
That was like 4 seasons really of how social entrepreneurs are taking more control about building up their economies and doing peace building, because they said after decades of NGOs with all their good intentions, nothing's changing. So how do we start creating our own businesses and our own economic value? And the third one, I'm not sure. It's either going to be something about when we get it wrong, because I think failures in business are also a really important thing to share with each other, or it's going to be more about activism in a business context. So really looking at entrepreneurs. But
very cool. Yeah, keep me posted. Now we are coming to the end of the podcast, but I'm going to ask you just a couple more questions. What keeps you up at night? But then what also gives you hope?
I actually sleep really well. I mean, that doesn't mean that I've got a whole long list of worries and things that I feel really upset about. And I think my antidote has been to just not get too sucked up into the news, because it's just really depressing. I started reading this magazines years ago, Positive News, and I realized that actually surrounding yourself with positive stories is so much more engaging and empowering than trailing through the negative news. And the things that I'm hopeful about, I've been digging into Joanna Macy's concept of active hope, which for me is my mum will say, I'm on this generation, there was always something to worry about. First there was the Cold War, then it was the ozone layer. Things are going to be fine, and I'm just like, but they're not. You can hope that but we do need to do something. So this idea of active hope, I have to say, I think these climate activists not them themselves, but in 2019, I felt like we were riding a wave of like, okay, we're going to start really stepping up and, coming out as businesses and employees to really tackle these issues. And then when the pandemic happened, it was just, my hope was, well, this is going to solve, this is going to make us aware of like not flying and it's all good, but it just feels like it's come back full force, the way our economic activity is driven. So I'm hopeful, especially when I speak to my children about all these different voices that are coming up, that they think it's courageous and it has to happen and stuff, that this whole new generation sees this as normal, that we need to fight these issues and need to engage with them, that we can no longer not do it. So it's not a choice. So that
exactly. I agree.
And that generation is becoming bigger than the previous one. So that's hopefully will be a tipping point.
That's such a great way to start finishing this off. Now, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like to tell our listeners?
The subtitle to the Undercover Activist is Activism is Love Made Visible. And I think what I would like to say is when we see the climate activists or when we see what's happening around us, to maybe understand what it triggers in us, so that our reactive behavior is maybe to react to an awkwardness or like a fear or their anger, because I think that it comes across as being very angry. But I think that there's a lot of care that underlies a lot of what is happening, like why people act. And that if we can go that one step deeper into listening, so what is it that you care about? What are you trying to save, or how are you trying to make it better? Then the conversations would be different, a different flavor and a different hopefulness would come out. So I think that's what I wanted to say. So to transform it from that kind of suppressed anger to kind of, okay, where do we
Conversation.
Yeah, there's no monopoly on the truth at the moment, right? It's so complex, and it's not like that. I think the young generation has all the answers. I think that in fact that everybody in positions in businesses, everybody has something to bring into the conversation. So how can we kind of start seeing both sides in ourselves?
So important in so many things, isn't it? Politics, so many things.
Yes.
Oh, I could talk to you forever. We do need to wrap this up, but I really appreciate your time and thank you for helping us get your story out. I know this is going to inspire a lot of people. I'm working on something with M&G. I know that a lot of people from there listen to these podcasts. So Christine, Kirsty, I know that they're going to be listening to this and I know that they're going to be very excited to know more. We just need to continue the conversation. So
thank you for the platform, and also, I guess, for the curiosity, because it always helps me think when people ask me questions I don't know the answers to yet. So thank you.
Until next time.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, this is Philippa again. I hope you enjoyed listening. Now this is your chance to get involved with TIE. If you work in the commercial world, whatever your profession, your position, or your experience, then TIE could be for you. You may have been in business for decades, but have always felt there's another way. Or you may just have a few years experience, but want to do more. Equally, if you want to create game-changing employees and see your company impact the world, we've got you covered. TIE has never been more necessary than right now, and you can be a part of it. Reach out to me at philippa@theinternationalexchange.co.uk and I can tell you more. Or join the TIE Accelerator info session for more information. apply.tieaccelerator.com. Better leaders, better companies, better world. I'm your host, Philippa White. This podcast has been co-produced by Berna Vieira and me, music by Berna Vieira, and artwork by Kelps Vahais. I hope we'll meet again soon.